ref. That she got the ball. Yes, good afternoon, Tottenham fans. Welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys, Dave, Dermo, and Steve. And Jack will be joining us. He's just running a small bit behind. But we are here for what is one of the biggest days on the calendar for a Tottenham fan, and that is Tottenham versus Chelsea. It is a London derby, and it is an absolute massive game today. 5:30 kickoff. As a Spurs fan, if you're not pumped for this, then I just think you're absolutely miserable. But look, we'll go around the house, see how everybody is, check in with the chat, and then we're going to crack on because we've got a lot to discuss this afternoon ahead of the big one tonight. Stevie, how are you, my friend?
Oh, dude, I'm absolutely fired up, man. It's another opportunity in a London derby to kind of erase the misery of the last 13 matches these two teams played. I like the idea that it's at the Lane, having our home fans there, creating an atmosphere where it's going to electrify some of the players. And listen, it's an opportunity to get over on a team that, quite frankly, I absolutely hate.
No, absolutely. Look, we don't have the best of whole forms, and we don't have a good record against Chelsea, so we well and truly are the underdogs heading into today, Dormo. But I think you'd have it no other way, right? How are you keeping?
I would have it no other way. Look, we only got 8 wins out of the last 66 Premier League games against them, 7 at home and only 1 away. We lost our last 4, but it's not as bad as it was in the 90s, Dave, when you were only a wee whippersnapper. We went 32 games without a win against Chelsea. But that's not going to be today. We're going to turn up. We're going to whip them. We're going to put them back to West London, send them flying back to their mammy's basements, crying into their arms, saying, "Mammy, the big bullies from Tottenham have beaten us." And what do I do? And she goes, there, it's okay. You're going to be all right. As we, the Tottenham boys, are the pride of London. Come on, you Spurs. Let's beat these Chelsea boys. They're not even a football club. They're an embarrassment. Come on.
It's a big one. It's a big one, that's for sure. And look, B-Tech Pep, CEO of the Chelsea Flower Show, that's what's in store for us today. Yeah. And hopefully we can take them down a peg or two. What I will say is, they have been gathering some momentum very, very quietly there as the season's gone on. So, and they also are as good as scoring from corner kicks and that, and as potent from set pieces as we are as well. So it's going to be a real tough game today. Sorry, Steve, I cut across you. Did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was going to follow up Dermot by just saying they're a bunch of posh cunts. At the end of the day, that's exactly what they are. So
I was trying to be polite, Steve, but you've just put it absolutely how I wanted to say, but big up.
Absolutely love it. Well, look, let's welcome in some people from the chat. Let's see who we got with us this afternoon, and then we will crack on. Big up, Adrian. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well, sir. We've also got Shem Tam in the house. Good to see you. He says, excited to see Spurs finally end the hoodoo against Chelsea. We have to win today. Come on, you Spurs. Well, I would argue, I think the team selection, Wednesday night or against Newcastle, sort of puts a bit more pressure onto today's game. Let's see how we do today. We've also got Alpesh Patel in the house. Good afternoon, getting ready to go to the match in a few minutes. Frank has got a lot of decisions to make when we still don't have a balanced settled squad due to injuries. The story of this team. And look, this is what I'm going to say. I get we've got injuries, but Conte had injury problems. Jose had injury problems. Postecoglou had injury problems. It's not an excuse. Every other manager in the Premier League is dealing with injury problems and stuff like that. You've got to try and make the best of what you've got available to you, and you've got to try and make it work, and you still got to try and win games. At the end of the day, you are paid by the football club, regardless of the circumstances. As a manager, it's not going to be perfect all season long, but it's up to you to find a way to win games. So the pressure is on. But Alpesh, let me know where you're sitting in the stadium today, my man. Let me know. Big up, Alpesh. Good to see you in the building. We are Spurs TV says I'm against rushing Romero back to play a rival. Very, very interesting. What I will say is, though, he was training before the Newcastle game. Yep. So it's not like, we're just bringing him out of the cold. He has had a few days training under his belt heading into this when we are Spurs TV. But he says there's a good chance he gets hurt and is out for 2 to 3 months. Yeah, absolutely fair point. I mean, look, we're going to have a conversation around Kevin Danso today because he's been absolutely superb. I really like Kevin Danso. I think the big thing this year that is, if one of Romero or Van de Ven do go injured, you do actually have a centre-back that many people like many people trust and that can actually defend, just loves defending, old school, putting his body on the line. And he can help you maintain results if we do suffer an injury to one of these two. But of course, touch wood, we don't, because they're absolutely phenomenal up the other end as well in terms of getting on the end of set pieces. Of course, Mickey van der Ven, 5 goals already this season. Romero's already had a couple disallowed. Shows how potent he can be up the other end as well. AK Shake says, come on, you Spurs. Good to see you. We have Slim Boy Tub says, big up one and all. Come on, you Spurs. We also have Anna Cole in the house. Hello from the Welsh Valleys. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you, Anna, in the building. We also have Ribsy85. Hey, all, big one. Come on, you Spurs. It's an absolute massive one. Hopefully you and Oliver are dressed to impress for today's game on that one, Ribsy. Good to see you in the building, sir. Jason said, Chelsea scumbags. J-Mac says, big up, Davy lad, Steve and Dermot. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, J-Mac. Good to see you in the building. And hopefully you are keeping well, my man. OL has gone with Vicario, Spence, Van de Ven, Danzo, Porro, Paulinia, Bergval, Simmons, Udeberg, Colo, and Kudos ahead of today's game. Guys, giving your thoughts on the lineup in the chat. We also have Terry Bet, Spurs to win. It's a big one today. Of course, I mean, there's nothing better than beating Chelsea. Go back to the one where Ollie Skip rifled in an absolute fucking screamer. I mean, we won that day, and that one sort of carried me for a couple of weeks. I'm not going to lie, so that just shows how much of a big win today, can sort of carry the mood over the next couple of games. And also, we've got bigger games coming up. So if we can scalp Chelsea today, it just gives you a bit of confidence, a bit of momentum with bigger games coming up to follow. Big up, Terry. Good to see you. Kate Rickson's in the house, Dave and Panel. Hope you're all well. Kate, we are good. Hopefully you are keeping well. Good to see you in the building. We also have, let me see, Cantab in the house says, lads, it's Chavsky. Big up, good to see you. We also have Tyler in the building. Hope you all are doing well. Come on, you Spurs. Winning this game would be massive, absolutely huge, Tyler. Look, it's a monumental task. You've got to try and patch the home form. Got a horrible record against Chelsea. I've suffered some bad beatings against them in years gone by. It really does hurt. But at the end of the day, the home form has to change at some point. Frank has already broken some records this year in terms of the West Ham curse, the international break curse, stuff like that. So, Chelsea is the next one to be lined up. Good to see you, Tyler. We also have Kevin Gonzalez in the house. I think we can beat Chelsea if they get a red. Well, look, these games are always fast, ferocious. There's a lot of bookings. What I will say is the guy in charge today, Jared Gillette, he loves booking Spurs players. He's got a horrible record managing Spurs games in terms of the amount of players he's booked. Out of all the games he's managed, he books more Spurs players than anybody else. So, the warning signs are there. Alberto 2-1 today. Dave and Dermot, good afternoon. Xavi scores today. Well, we're going to speak about him because let's not forget, he turned down Chelsea to sign for Tottenham Hotspur. So we'll have to have a conversation around that today. And then also Reckless Madness. Hi, Dave, Steve and Dermot. Happy game day. Let's show Chowski what we are made of. Come on, you Spurs. Well, as you can see, guys, the Spurs fans are holding up their end of the bargain. They're absolutely pumped for today's game. So hopefully we do generate a nice raucous atmosphere. I know there's a few different led fan groups that have sort of got together with the club to try and generate a real good atmosphere for today's game. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But I mean, Stevie, we will start with you. Spurs do welcome Chelsea to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for what's always one of the biggest London derbies of the season. Chelsea have started to find some rhythm under Enzo Maresca, the B-Tech Guardiola. How big of a challenge does this represent for Thomas Frank's Tottenham side today?
It's kind of a massive challenge when you consider the the failure that we had in the midweek against a team that was absolutely intense and physical in Newcastle, right? One of the things that I noticed last weekend, when Sunderland came into the bridge and absolutely took the pitch with absolutely no fear. They were not afraid of the hostile environment. They weren't afraid of the talent that Chelsea had on the pitch, and they stood up and matched their intensity and matched their physicality. And then when they got forward, man, they just took advantage of everything that was given to them and walked away with the bridge from 3 points, right? And that's kind of the challenge for me today. You mentioned the ref. That should not be an issue for Spurs to step on the pitch with the right mentality, understanding that, once we walk on, these 3 points are ours, and not allow Chelsea to bully us off the pitch, because that's what they like to do. They like to play physical early. They like to bully, and then as this game progresses, they like to use their finesse and their skill to put the game away, right? So it's absolutely massive for Spurs right from the opening whistle not to back down and to jump in every single 50-50 challenge, to jump into tackles and let Chelsea know you're not playing your game here today. Not at all.
I agree with you. I think that's so important that we don't allow Chelsea to settle in. And look, I did like Thomas Frank's words sort of in the press conference that he plans on going for Chelsea today, which I think is the right approach. Because if we sort of play pragmatic or sit off them and allow them to pass it around, all you're doing is allowing them to sort of quell the atmosphere down that will be there, come kickoff, quieten it down. And then all of a sudden they start feeling comfortable. Now, look, I would argue in the last couple of seasons, I think you go back all the way to maybe Conte and that, I think we have turned up in these games and looked for the fight, looked for the battle. And I think that sort of the Tottenham team understanding what the derby means to fans, I think has sort of been shown on the football pitch. But this is where the referee has played parts in years gone by. You go back to Romero's hair pull on Cucurella, which was absolutely iconic, by the way. But we got a result because the referees didn't, pull out a card that day. But you go back to Postecoglou, we were 2-0 up, we were dominating them. All of a sudden, a couple of sending offs, shit refereeing decisions, quick to pull out the card against Tottenham players, all of a sudden changes the game.
Conceding penalties, bad decisions in our own box. Yeah, for sure.
Like that one against Romero where he got sent off, which led to everybody calling him aggressive. And I tried to say, well, hang on. He's kicked the ball. The guy's right in front of him. Naturally, you're going to follow through. But if he's got the ball first, then it shouldn't even be, a penalty or anything like that. So, in these games, the refereeing decisions, if they can't handle the environment and the occasion, and they're very card happy, they can ruin this game for Tottenham despite the ferocity we come out with and stuff like that. And, this referee today is known for giving Tottenham players cards. And all of a sudden, if you start picking up enough early cards, all of a sudden you're in a situation where you can't make challenges, you can't pull down attacks and stuff like that. And that can change the game. So we do need a bit of fairness from the referee today in terms of, decision making, because I'd argue against Newcastle, they got all the 50-50 decisions right at the end. The referee stopped Mawani from progressing and trying, literally became the 12th man. It's important that we can try and get that referee on our side today and become our 12th man today. But you're absolutely right. I do want to see us go after Chelsea today and not really allow them to settle in. But I mean, Dermot, it's a massive London derby. How are you feeling going into this one? Nervous, optimistic? Or just hoping to avoid another repeat of the last few seasons?
I'm optimistic because, look, Chelsea have only won 2 in the last 5. They've lost to Man United away. They've lost to Brighton at home. Last them out, they lost to Sunderland at home. I just think we can turn up today. Yes, we haven't won 1. We've only won twice in our last 5 days. That was against Leeds away and Everton at home. But I think we're in a better position than Chelsea. I think their manager doesn't know what his best 11 is. And I think we're a little bit more consistent for what we're putting out. And it's at home. And that is where the fans have to make it as hostile and as toxic as humanly possible. We looked when we did that against Arsenal when Conte was in charge. We put Arsenal off that game. We won that game. That got us top 4.
Yeah.
We have to do it today. Yes, it's been quiet at the stadium. Yes, you don't get much of a atmosphere. I get it because it's not White Hart Lane. If that's White Hart Lane, that place is bouncing. But I think we can today, and I think we can win. We've got to go in with the right attitude, the right sort of narrative. And as for the referee, Dave, out of the 11 games he's managed, he's refereed Tottenham. We've won 5 and lost 6 under this referee. So our history under him isn't great, but today's going to be 6 wins and 6 defeats because we're going to beat Chelsea today. I don't think Chelsea are this impossible monster everyone should be scared of. They're not in great form themselves. They're very inconsistent. They played Wolves during the week, Dave. No disrespect to Wolves. 4-0 up or 4-1 up. You should be cruising. What happens? They scrape by 4-3. So if Wolves can score 3 against them, why can't we?
Let's not knock them from scraping by. At the end of the day, they're in the 5th round. We're not. So I'm not going to knock them.
Yeah, I know, but I'm making a point that against Wolves, if they're just all great team, and they made 21 changes, we didn't. And where that's no excuse, I don't think Chelsea know what their best 11 is. At least we do. We've got a solid back 5. We've got a midfield pivot in Paulinho and Bentancur, Papasar in the middle. You put Kudus on the right, Xavi on the left, Kulu up front, and then that's your team to beat Chelsea. And you got Romero, the Argentinian bulldog, back in the back there, captain fantastic, leading the team, looking for Cucurella for a bit more of his hair because he missed it the last time we played them.
look, I'd argue, I think there's a fair argument to say does Frank know his best 11 yet either. I think
Yeah, I would
that's
say
a
the
fair
same thing.
argument as well, with the amount of rotations and that he's been making all season. There's a fair question to ask. Has he got a set of 11 that he's sort of settled on? But look, when it comes to Chelsea, I think they are there to get at today. At the end of the day, they do have problems across the centre-back area. They've got a lot of injuries and stuff like that. They do concede goals. And if Wolves can put 3 by them, now of course, they made a lot of changes and stuff like that. But there's no reason why we can't get at them, and create chances there. Now, of course, the big question comes around, will we have anyone in the final third to be able to finish them chances? That's what I think has been the big problem most of this season. But there will be opportunities to get at Chelsea today, which gives you hope that we can go and win this game. It's not like the years gone by where they've had your John Terrys, your Carvalhos, your Essiens, and people like that, where they were absolutely defensively sound. That's not that Chelsea team we're coming up against today. They have had problems defending all season. However, going forward, they are very, very good. They are more than capable of scoring goals. They are very good from scoring from set pieces and stuff like that. They do pose an absolute massive threat. It's just, can we limit the amount of chances? Can we get pressure on them to stop them dominating the possession that they use to be able to create all these chances? That's the big thing for me. But I do agree with your point. They are definitely there to be got at for sure. And if we can remain resilient across the back line, then there is a massive chance today. It's not the unsurmountable task that maybe it has been in years gone by due to the quality of players that they've had to select from compared to us and stuff. This is more of an even game heading into today's game. So there is more of an opportunity for us to win this. It's just history isn't on our side, but every day is a new day to be able to change history at the end of the day, or rewrite history, as they say. Stevie, back to you. These games always bring drama. We already spoke about, right, the amount of sending offs and, the Cucurella hair pull by Romero, which is iconic, by the way. I need to get a picture of that and get that framed. So, Emily, if you're watching, get me a picture of that and frame it for me for Christmas. But, do you expect another end-to-end chaotic derby like we've seen in recent sessions? Or because we're a bit more defensively solid than what we've seen in years gone by, do you think it won't be as end-to-end in that case?
That's a great question. According to Thomas Frank, we're going to be pressing high, and we're going to be trying to do the little things, to create some of that action. But that being said, I guess the question that I actually have for the both of you is, whether or not Thomas Frank is actually going to put out a team and put in the right tactics where we're not so easy to defend. That's kind of like, for me, that's kind of the big question, right? Because again, with all some of our limitations in the attack, we have become so very easy to defend. Where the likes of Everton, literally can hold us scoreless for 80 minutes in the run of play. Before finally conceding, right? And it's also across the board. Same thing with Newcastle in the midweek. We were so goddamn easy to defend to the point where it ended up as that game progressed, we ended up being a one-sided affair, right? So for me, I look at Chelsea and I look at the way that they're going to set up. By the way, Enzo Fernandez is going to be available. João Pedro is going to be available today. Moises Caicedo, and that's the big one. Moises Caicedo is going to be available today as well too. And so whoever's going to be in that central position, whether it be Xavi Simons or whether it's going to be Pat Sarr, right? The question is whether or not we're going to be able to move the ball centrally to even put ourselves in a position where we are going to even sustain possession long enough for us to actually be dangerous, right? So for me, that's a great question. I would like to say yes, but quite honestly, Dave, I don't necessarily think so.
One would argue if we could maybe take the chaotic nature out of it, would it actually suit us and work out in our favour today? Because years gone by when it's been sort of chaotic, Chelsea have come out the better of it, and stuff like that. I wonder if we could make it less drama-free today, will that actually work out in our favour? It'd be interesting to see, how we go about
now,
that.
Are you speaking like in a counter-attacking type of term where we're actually far more compact and solid and actually pick and choosing when we're going to get forward from that type, taking that chaos out, and this is exactly how we're going to approach it?
Look, don't get me wrong. I think, I would like to think for the first 10, 20 minutes, you're fresh. That's when your legs are freshest in a game. Go after them. Don't be afraid. Put pressure on the ball. Don't allow them to settle and stuff like that. But if we can go up the other end and nick a goal, I think it'd be in our favor for 5 to 10 minutes to sort of take the sting out of the game, take the momentum out of them, by slowing it down at set pieces and, stuff like that. A bit like what Newcastle done to us during the week, right? They came at us for the first half an hour. They got the goal. All of a sudden, they sort of just sat back, managed the game, took an eternity over set pieces, hit us again on the counter, and then all of a sudden the game's beyond us, But I think, for the first half an hour, I think it will be chaotic and frantic. But if we can get one ahead, if we can then take that out of the game, I think then it would really suit us and give us a massive, massive chance. But look, let's take a couple of comments here from the chat, and then we'll kick on. We've got RXT in the building, says about the opinion of the Carabao Cup being Mickey Mouse and writing it off, since we have become so arrogant that we can just throw away trophies. Now, look, I do understand what you're saying. I am of the opinion, if you want to be a big club, you don't really pick and choose what trophies you want to go and win and stuff like that. And I know people will point to a lot of other managers rotated, which is absolutely a fair point. But the reality is they rotated knowing that they had a good enough team to put out there and go and win the game. I just think we rotated and sacrificed that game for this game today, which I think is a huge call. If it doesn't go right, then there will have to be questions asked and stuff like that. But what I would say is, and look, I was probably angrier than most going out of the cup because I did see it as our best chance of silverware this year. And I'm not of the opinion that we should be sitting here stabilizing. We're Europa League champions. We should be using that to sort of kick on and sort of bring about a winning culture at this football club and start showing that if you're here to compete for all 4 trophies, regardless whether you're a player, a manager, a fucking physician, a physio. I do not give a shit. You're here to make sure this squad can compete over 4 competitions. I think by sort of picking and choosing, I think it sets the precedent for people coming into this club moving forward and stuff like that. It's sort of back to the old sort of times, isn't it? Where you can pick and choose. Well, it's the way it's always really been at time. You can pick and choose when you want to perform. There's no consequences for losing games and stuff like that. Look, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. We've got to move on. We've got a bigger fish to fry today. It's behind us. I've shared my opinion about it. I move on. I deal with the next game. That's where I'm at with it, RST. But look, I'll throw this one over to Stevie and Dermot. I know they'll probably have opinions on it, and we will crack on.
Look, in my view, I had my view on the fan show the other night when it was brought up. And yes, I was very angry by that sort of comment of it being a Mickey Mouse and labeling Europa League as a Mickey Mouse. And that really angered me because when you set out in the season, you got 3 objectives. One is to win 2 domestic trophies if you can, either the Carabao Cup or the FA Cup. We haven't won the FA Cup since I was a teenager, 1991. There's a major majority of this fan base or this people watching that have never seen us win an FA Cup. I mean, that is shocking. That is a shocking indictment of Tottenham Hotspur. We should never be like that. When we last won the FA Cup, we were the record holders. We won it 8 times, more than anyone else. We're now in 2025, probably 2026, when the final will be held. Arsenal are above for 14. We're still stuck in 8. You do not throw away chances to go to Wembley. You do not throw away chances to win a domestic trophy. I don't care what you are or who you are. Your 3 main objectives: win a domestic trophy, qualify for Europe, and also if you're in that European trophy competition, and if you can win it, try and go and win that. Because we're not going to win the Premier League. Let's be fair. We're not going to be in connection unless it's a freak of nature and we have a Leicester year. We're not going to win the Premier League. We can win domestic trophies. We should be, and calling it Mickey Mouse Cup it's an insult to the 4 captains that have picked up that trophy in years gone by. 71, 73, 99, and 2008. It's an insult to their memory, and it's an insult to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Yeah. To be honest with you. Sorry, go on, Stevie.
Yeah, I was going to say what actually pissed me off when I saw that lineup. I was at my blood was boiling because you look at the way that Newcastle handled it. You look at the way that Crystal Palace handled it. Manchester City handled it. They actually took this fixture as an opportunity to get themselves into the next round and push them closer to Wembley. Right. And that's the thing that I actually appreciate about Eddie Howe and Newcastle is they understand where they are as a club, right? And it's something that I dearly wish for Spurs, because let's be honest, we are at the beginning in yet another project, right? Thomas Frank has only had one window. We still have massive gaps in our roster, and we know for a fact that we're not going to be hoisting silverware in the Premier League or the Champions League, which leaves two domestic competitions. And the fact that he rotated himself out of the Carabao Cup with a lineup that essentially says that it's not a priority. To me, that is what absolutely boiled my blood, because there was no reason why they couldn't have carried over the same 11 from Everton and then rotated out certain players at certain positions at certain points of the game, and putting themselves in a position where they could grab a lead, and potentially put themselves in a position to kick on to the next round. I mean, as this club is currently situated right now, I think Derm and I are on the same page that you don't throw away an opportunity to get to Wembley. Right, that was the opportunity to sustain European play and to grab another trophy.
No, look, 100%. Look, everyone knows, how angry I was after going out of the cup and stuff like that, and I'm not happy about it. What I will say though is, I think in general, if we're talking about the Tottenham fan base, I do think many of the fan base see Chelsea as the bigger game. If he wins today, all's forgiven. People won't give a fuck about the Carabao Cup moving forward. That's just the nature of the beast, and that's just the reality of it. And fair play to him, But where I sort of just get annoyed is like, I understand there was going to be some rotation. I think just some of the rotation he got wrong. Look, Tyler, I think, makes a fair point. He says they also rotated more than us. They made 8 changes. I think the big thing though for me, Tyler, when I look at Eddie Howe's rotation, he has Osula on the bench. He knows he's absolute dog shit. He kept Voltemada on. Voltemada scored the second goal, ended up taking away a game from Tottenham Hotspur. So Eddie Howe left a forward player on the pitch he believed in that could go and win him this game. We didn't. Frank played Johnson and Richarlison, 2 players that he just doesn't believe in. That's why when these options come back, they're straight into the team, which for me is where I think he got it wrong. I probably didn't cover myself in glory the day out, or I did straight when the final whistle went and stuff like that. But hopefully, people understand my point in that. He also kept Tonali deep in midfield so that he had a player there that could maintain the possession. He kept Dan Burn in the side. He kept players that he could trust, that he felt were important to go and win the game. He just didn't throw in what he had available to him. He still had in mind winning the game. And at the end of the day, they want to win it because they won it last season. They want to try and go and retain it again this year. And I just think if we really want to kick on to the elite, I think if we do start going out of cups and stuff, we got to stop just dealing with copium. And start, it's okay to go, look, understand, why we've went out, but it's disappointing. At the end of the day, how many, the big problem with Enoch and Levy down the years was not picking up trophies, not targeting trophies. Now that Levy's gone, who many, and including myself, thought was a massive obstacle, now all of a sudden we're just doing what he used to do. Don't care about the domestic cup. It's all about the league. But my problem with putting all of our eggs in the league is we weren't forced into that decision right now. It's so early on in the season. There's no reason why we couldn't have put our team in both games to try and go and win both. If this was towards the end of the season and it was like cup or go and try and make top 4, then I could understand that decision. But I just don't think we were forced into that so earlier on in the season. And this is a cup that Tottenham have done well in under previous managers. Semi-final under Ange, semi-final under Conte, final under Jose Mourinho. If it's good enough for them guys that have trophies on their CV, then I think it should be more than good enough for Frank, who doesn't have trophies on his CV. And I think that's the difference for me. I just worry moving forward, is this going to be a continued pattern next season? Is he still going to bin off the domestic cups? Because that's what he done at Brentford. He didn't care about domestic cups. He just prioritized league safety. We're not that football club. We want to go and win trophies. So, look, I understand the rotation, but I just don't think he left a forward player on the pitch that gave anyone really any belief that we were going to win that game. And if fans don't believe it, then you best believe some of the players deeper on the pitch believe it also, that them players ain't going to be good enough to go and win the game.
Rotating off Kolobwani and Kudus, especially considering Kudus is probably our most consistent forward line player. I don't know, man. I had a massive problem with that, and also rotating Polinia back into the back 4, leaving out Van de Ven. And I understand, right? Because there is that inkling to rotate certain players because you want to avoid injury, and I get it, right? Because again, we're dealing with a heavily injured squad. But that being said, it's like again, you could have figured out a way where you can minimize minutes so that that wear and tear does not come into effect by still keeping your same 11 from the 3-0 victory over Everton the weekend prior. And by the way, Thomas Frank has only 4 times this season in 14 matches has he kept the same 11 from one match to another.
Well, look, we're going to come on to about this Thomas Frank sort of know his best 11. And look, to be fair, it's hard when you have the amount of injuries we do and stuff like that. But I think it's a fair question to ask. I just want to take a couple more comments here from the chat and we'll kick on. We've got Tony Darko, THSE, got absolutely piss drunk last night. Had a dream. We were 4-1 up after less than 30 minutes. I mean, I will be on Pluto if we are 4-1 up after 30
minutes. You wouldn't see Dave on screen. He'd be running around Kildare with his top round. He's doing lay. That's what you'd be doing.
I'll be on Pluto. I'll probably be half naked, top off around the head and everything. And trust me, no one wants to see that. Not even my missus, I don't think wants to see that. Kevin Ferguson says,
fans,
man,
Dave,
how you
only
doing?
Fans.
Yeah, no, not for me, Dharma. I'm doing all right, Kevin. I'm doing all right. Hopefully you're keeping well, my man. Good to see you in the building. Big up DJ Samuel as well. As always, good to see you. Says, come on, you Spurs. Mash and Joe says, hello, Dave. Yes, you should have tried to win the League Cup. Really appreciate that, my man. And that's coming from an Everton fan, by the way, everybody. J Max says, especially on the Frank, domestic cups are the only thing we can win, in my opinion. Absolutely fair point. We've also got Ghosted says, big up, good to see you. So hopefully you're keeping well as well, Ghosted. Then we've got this from Brecon. Says, member for 12 months. Can't believe it's been a year already. I know it's been a long time, Brecon. I mean, look, to be honest with you, since I started this, years used to go before this, years used to sort of drag by. Now all of a sudden, when you're just doing game, the years are just flying by. I'm starting to get grey hairs. And honestly, all the days start morphing into one because you're out of one game. You have to go and do content again for the next game. Honestly, it's all just mashing into one at this stage. But look, I think that's just the way life has become in general. Everything's so fast-paced now. Everything's open later, longer, stuff like that. People are working longer hours and everything else. It's just the way life has gone, Brecon. Good to see you in the building, though, sir. We also have Lazy 8, member for 52 months. Good to see you, Nick. Hopefully you're well, my man, he says, is there a possibility that Frank deprioritized the cup because he thinks that going further in would be a hindrance in retaining the Champions League spot? And look, I think that's the whole point around it, Nick. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think, many people that sort of would say, look, I'm okay with the changes and stuff like that, are going, well, look, the league's the bigger priority. And people like me are going, why is he prioritizing the league over the domestic cup? My whole point is, we're about 10 games into the Premier League season. There's no need to be able to pick this early. If it was later on in the season, I would understand it. But this early in the season, I don't understand it. And for me, we go on we should prioritize the league. We're not in the Champions League this year because we finished 4th last season. We're in the Champions League because we went and won a Europa League. We went and won a cup. We haven't qualified for the Champions League in the league in a couple of seasons now, in a few years. 3 or 4 years now it's been since we've qualified through the league. So everyone's going on like it's a given. What if we don't win today? All of a sudden, then it's one that's backfired. Yep. It puts massive pressure. But I suppose, look, that's naturally my follow-up question. I mean, by rotating so heavily Wednesday night in the Carabao Cup and seemingly prioritizing the Chelsea game today, has Thomas Frank then increased the pressure on himself and the squad to bounce back with a statement performance today?
He has. He has put pressure on them. So unnecessary pressure, to be honest. Because if you look at the next 3 games, Dave, we've got Chelsea today. We've got Man United before the international break, and then we've got Arsenal just after the international break. So the next 3 games are highly, highly important that we get something out of them. And I think he's making a rod for his own back, because are we as fans going to be as patient with Thomas Frank? We weren't under Ange last season, were we? When the league form started to dip. Didn't matter what we did in Europe till we got to the final and won it, and then it totally changed the narrative. But up to them, there were fans calling for Ange to go out, to be sacked there and then. After every game, it was, is this the game where he gets sacked? And it was tiring. Steve, you know what I mean. Dave, you know what I mean. It was mentally tiring. Is this the game where he goes? And he did it to himself. And Thomas Frank's doing the same thing. He's putting himself under unnecessary pressure. If we won on Wednesday, Yes, there was still pressure for today. But would the fans be upset? Yes, they would be. Not as much, though, because we'd be in the next round of the cup. We'd be in the quarterfinals. And I think Thomas Frank is, I think what Lazy 8 says here, I think is a very dangerous road to go down. If you're putting the cup because you're going for a Champions League spot, I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. You are where you finish in the league. It's over 38 games. Winning the cup competition, that's legacy. That's history. That gives you glory. That gives you bragging rights. That gives you the whole summer. We're the FA Cup winners. We're the League Cup winners.
Mm.
But getting fourth or fifth place, no, not for me. I'm sorry. Is that a trophy? No. I'm old school. Maybe it is for the younger fans. Maybe it's for the younger generation where they think fifth place is better than winning the trophy. I'm old school. Give me a trophy any day.
I do understand the benefits of qualifying in the top four. It brings more money. That Champions League revenue means you can get more players of a Kudus ilk and stuff like that moving forward. And and the more you are in the Champions League, the bigger of a draw you are. The more players want to come to you and stuff like that. So of course, I think for the sake of balance and stuff like that, I think that does have to be thrown in the mix. And some people are probably at the point where it's like, look, we finished 17th last year. It's about sort of trying to get back or as close to as the top four as we can, getting that money back in and sort of building a squad so that next season we can go on and compete across all four competitions, that we don't have to sort of prioritize one over another. For me, it was just, it's so early in the season. If it was later in the season, it was between the FA Cup and top four, I could understand the decision. I just think, could he have adjusted that lineup slightly to do for today's game and the Newcastle game? That's just all I'm asking on it. But look, to be honest with you, I didn't even want to talk about it today. It's just the fact that RST brought it up, and I suppose you have to honor the conversation at the end of the day. Let's know. Good to see you. Morning, Dave and Council. Any word on Vicario injury? To be honest with you, I didn't look at it yesterday. To be honest with you, my man, I've had a real bad skin condition for years and stuff, and I had to take my injection yesterday and stuff. And for the first day or two, it sort of makes me a bit unwell. So to be honest with you, I've seen bits and pieces from the Thomas Frank press conference, but I didn't watch it in its entirety heading into today's game. Slim Boy Tubbs, I says, agree with what you say, Dave, but I think sometimes our luck in the draw doesn't help us. I know we have to beat good teams to get to the final, but look at last season's Carabao, United, City, Liverpool. And look, that's absolutely spot on as well. I do think we don't really get a lot of luck in the cup draws, to be fair. I think you could argue maybe under Jose Mourinho, I think we got a bit of luck with saying that. We did have to beat Chelsea, I think, in the quarters to end up getting Brentford in the semis and stuff. But I do take your point. Cup draws haven't been kind to us. We sort of tend to usually get the bigger teams in it anyway. Big up, Daniel Phil. Good to see you, sir. Hopefully you're keeping well. I'd see him correct themselves, and I meant to say Irish. Jamie Furman says you lot need to stop moaning. Look, at the end of the day, like I said, I didn't even want to speak about it today. But if some guy's going to send in his hard-earned money and wants it to be discussed, I'm going to discuss it. So I think that's absolutely fair. Tyler says, I find it wild that having Kudus and Mawani in there means we would have scored. Kudus has scored, one goal, and Mawani has gotten close. No form or fitness. No, look, fully understand what you're saying in that regard. I just think the point many people are, if you have one of them in there, I think it gives you a better chance. Like for instance, Tyler, you wouldn't be sitting here calling for Johnson and Richarlison to start again today. You would be asking for Mawani and Kudus to start today. Why? Because you think it gives us a better chance of netting a goal. So that's what I would say back to that, Tyler. So fair play. We've got Derek Hutchins in the house. Good to see you, Derek. Hopefully you're keeping well. And Sean also says, no guarantee we would have won on Wednesday if we had gone full strength either. Absolutely no guarantee, but I think it would give you a better chance to try and pick up points, though, to be fair, Sean. I just think when it comes to Richarlison and Johnson against Bodo, they weren't great. We had to bring Kudus off the bench. We had to bring players off the bench to try and go and salvage, a point that night. We've seen it for quite some time. They're just not good enough as a pair to go and win games. And I think the point is there was no guarantee of winning against Newcastle, of course. And no one's sitting here professing that either. No one's sitting here saying it was guaranteed, but it gives you a better chance. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, Shawnee. But look, let's keep it moving. Let's keep kicking on. I mean, look, just to show the magnitude of today's game, I mean, Spurs' recent record against Chelsea hasn't been great. We lost each of our past 4 in this derby and one win in our past 12 contests as well, which shows how big of a game or the size of the magnitude of this game today, that historically we don't really have the best records against Chelsea. Home record hasn't been great this year. But sometimes that's the magic of football, right? Everything's stacked against you, and sometimes you can just come out the right side of it. So hopefully today is one of them days. I'm going to throw another question at you, and I'm just going to sort of text Jack or see where he is, see if he's all right. Just bear with me. Where am I now? Yeah, Stevie, there are 3 points separating the two teams today in the league, with both teams chasing that top 4 spot. How significant could this result be in shaping Spurs' season and sort of putting us on that trajectory?
Well, I think it's massive because it's going to show that this team can actually compete with some of the heavies in the Premier League, right? Teams that I think I can't necessarily speak for a lot of fans, right? But I will say from my standpoint, right, I've always wondered since the start of the season whether or not this team is actually capable of competing with some of the better teams that completely outspend us, right? Whether or not this team is capable of showing up on the given day and actually matching matching some of these teams, right? One of the things that I think that it will do is give this team a huge load of confidence that they can actually show up, especially on their home pitch, and potentially put a team like Chelsea to the sword. It's going to give them confidence when they come back from the international break, against a team like Arsenal that's actually playing pretty well right now, right? So it allows them the belief and the confidence they can show up and beat anybody on any given weekend. And I think that's absolutely huge, considering that this team got used to losing for so long and accepted that mentality for so long. And now all of a sudden you're in this position, understanding that we do have some injuries. All that's fantastic, but even so, we can show up and we can actually handle our business. And that's, before the show, you were talking about winning culture. That's where winning culture actually begins on these type of matches, where you actually just put a marker down and you go out there and you handle your business and you get those 3 points. And if they don't, then it brings in another conversation, and that kind of fuels that negativity that I don't necessarily think is appropriate, right? So from that standpoint, one of the things you want to do, and especially if you're chasing that top 4, and especially with a team like Chelsea that's going to be competing with you for some of those spots, you actually have to lay down the marker and handle your business 100%.
Darbo, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I sort of, Steve said everything I was going to say, to be fair. I mean, Steve probably in sync on this one. I think where you are right, Steve, is about winning culture, and it does start today. And I think you're right on that. Look, we haven't got the best win against Chelsea. I mean, that's you look back through the history of Chelsea, Tottenham, Chelsea, we have a dreadful history against them. As I said, only 8 wins against them in 66 Premier League games, only 7 of them at home over them 66. So look, today's important. If we can beat Chelsea today, how much confidence will that put in the team coming up against Manchester United next Saturday? Then you got the international break. You got a bit of momentum going into the North London derby, which normally history tells you we don't do well at the Emirates Stadium. But, we went 2-0 down there the last time we won there, and Kabul got us the winner when we came back under Harry Redknapp, 2-0 down, 1-3-2. So, and look where that led us that season. So, do you know what I mean? It's all about winning breeds momentum. Momentum breeds confidence. Confidence then leads to a winning culture. That means you have to go out and win games, win trophies. That breeds. Graham Roberts and Steve Perryman always said when they won the FA Cup in 81, they were halfway winning the FA Cup in 82 because they knew how to get over the line. These group of players know how to win trophies. They've done it once. They're halfway there winning it again. So they do have some sort of a winning mentality. It does also come from the manager, Dave. It also comes from the manager and how he sets his team up, how he sets his team mentally up. And it stops at the very top. It starts with the manager, goes down to the players. It also stops at the very top of the football club as well. All great teams that win have a winning mentality from top to bottom. So everyone's got to be in sync. It can't be just on the players, Dave. It has to come from the top. It has to come from the coaches, the manager, then the players, and the fans as well. We've all got to be one. And we're not all one at the moment. We all seem to be a bit divided and a little bit hinky-pinky, wary. Some want this, some want that. We've all got to come together. Thomas Frank said it yesterday in the press conference. Big clubs come together for good times and bad. We've all got to come together, and it has to start today.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in that regard, but what I will also say is I think naturally under Pochettino, there's very little fraction within the Spurs fan base because you're winning most weeks. I mean, people don't complain when you're winning.
True.
It's with what's gone on with Tottenham under Jose, Conte, Angel, it doesn't help that they've all been divisive sort of managers as well, and stuff like that. But also, when you're not winning, you've had the problems we are. Everyone has different opinions on how you're going to fix it, and that's where the divide naturally comes in. With Thomas Frank winning games, and start turning around that home form and stuff, naturally people will buy in, people will go along with it. But you have to lead the way. So, on that one, Thomas Frank can say what he wants, but you just got to keep winning games, and naturally people will just buy into what you're doing. I don't think anyone's stubborn enough to go, well, he's winning week in, week out. I have a huge issue with the guy. I think many people go, do you know what? This was maybe my concern. That's been alleviated, that's sort of been proven wrong as time's gone on. So I've nothing to moan about. And I think that'll naturally happen, when we start being more consistent on the football pitch. But look, in terms of today's game, because there is only 3 points separating, both teams in the league, and we've got bigger games coming up, by the way, it'd be interesting to see how we do in them. But if we lose today, there's huge pressure all of a sudden then to start winning all of them games coming up to keep yourself within that top 4 conversation so early on. So, even if we don't win today, do not lose. Keep that 3 points between ourselves and Chelsea. If not, try and bridge it to 6 points today. And then that gives you a little bit of leeway or a little bit of scope, because you're not going to win every single one of these fixtures coming up this month. You're just not. That's realism right there. You're not going to win every single one of them. Some teams are going to be better than us. So, a team could catch us cold. We could be tired one night. Injuries ain't helping the situation. So we're not going to win every one of them. But all of a sudden, once Chelsea start getting back up there and they've closed the gap in there, you're seeing yourself fall adrift. All of a sudden, each game's become more pressurized. So even if we do not win today, just do not lose. Keep that barrier there. We have to keep ourselves ahead of the chasing pack, because I think Chelsea are down in 7th, 8th, or 9th. All of a sudden, if they win today, that pulls us right back down into that middle pack with big games still to come. And you don't want that moving forward. So it's just a do not lose today. If you can, please go and win the game. Absolutely imperative. And I think we all agree today, surely, no rotation. Surely, obviously, there's going to be natural where he's going to bring players back in that maybe didn't start midweek. But surely, I think we're everyone in agreement today that it's got to be the strongest lineup possible. Let me know in the chat.
Oh, with 100%, right? If Thomas Frank has deemed that both Christian Romero and Destiny Udogie are fit to play today, me personally, I think they walk right back into the starting 11, especially Christian Romero. And I know that there was a comment earlier in the chat about rushing Romero back. I don't think this was the same situation of Chelsea last season, where Ange Postecoglou acted out of desperation because he absolutely needed him back in the lineup. And it was kind of like a 50-50 call. To me, I get the impression that, Thomas Frank has pretty much slow rolled this to a point where, I think he's probably going to be far more comfortable rolling out a Christian Romero in that back 4 today. Same thing with Destiny Udogie. And so if those guys truly are ready to go, both of those come right back into the starting 11, because at the end of the day, those two guys definitely make up our best 11, 100%.
I would still play Spence, because I think Spence is slightly better than Udogie, in my opinion. I don't really rate Udogie that much, in my opinion. I do rate.
I disagree.
Spence more. Look, Romero, I think we've really missed him. We've missed his leadership. We've missed his organisation. And look, as good as Mickey van der Ven's been as captain, by the way, he hasn't done a bad job standing in for Romero. We've really missed our Argentinian bulldog. But for me, I don't think Udogie walks straight back in. Romero does, no question. Udogie, for me, start him on the bench and bring up, because I think Jed Spence, you said it the other day, Dave, he played well the other night. And I looked at the game again. I thought, do you know what? Dave may be right in that. Maybe I was a bit harsh on him. But I think Spence is actually a better defender than Udogie, in my opinion. I think he's grown into that role myself. But I think Romero, definitely walks straight back.
I think I think you're vastly underrating Destiny Udogie. That dude, talent-wise, pace for pace is so much better in our attack than what Jed Spence provides. But that being said, where I will give Spence's flowers is his ability in defending 1v1. But it's not like Destiny Udogie is a slouch in that department either. He's actually very good and covers a lot of ground, and I think he actually tracks back a little bit better. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think I think I sort of go along with you on that one, Stevie. I think with Jed Spence and Udogie, I think defensively they're both as good as each other. I don't think there's too much difference between them. I think going forward, though, I do think Destiny Udogie opens up that left-hand side a bit more.
Yep.
Not necessarily because he's so good on the ball, but it's because he's so willing to go on the overlap, so willing to get forward. He also has the engine to get back. And, of course, Jed Spence does. But the problem we have is we don't have a natural left-footed winger. So when you're playing Jed Spence and a right-footed winger down that side, naturally everyone wants to keep cutting inside, which means it becomes very predictable, very easy to sort of set up and defend against. Ideally what you want even if you can have one left footer down that side that gives you the option so that if you do play it and he's not tracked, he can put in a good ball. But if he is tracked, then it gives you space to cut inside. If you have two right footers, all of a sudden everyone's looking to play inside and it becomes very predictable. Then all of a sudden people are looking at the midfield and go, well, all they're doing is rotating it to the other side. It's because there's no options down the left-hand side, because every time it goes out there, they're just recycling it back to them. It is a huge problem down that side, having two right footers. So I do think with Destiny Udogie playing now on that side, it opens it up more. However, I think the big problem that we have with Jed Spence and the Destiny Udogie call today is we're already light on numbers. If there's a risk that Destiny Udogie isn't 100% fit, do you necessarily need to take that risk today? Do you sort of stick with Jed Spence and give him today's game? Because in fairness, I thought he was absolutely brilliant against Newcastle in terms of up and down that flank all game without really any little help. Whereas Johnson and Porro could barely, do anything down that right-hand side, especially defensively as well. Yet there was two of them. So I think, that shows how good Jed Spence can be and how effective he is. But it's like, do you take the risk knowing the bigger games that are coming up with Destiny Udogie if he's not 100% fit? Well, I think we'll only really know that decision come lineup. So it'll be interesting to see in terms of what happens there. Let's take a few more chats chats here from the comment section and see what people are saying on this Destiny Udogie and Jed Spence situation. William Webb says, would love to see Udogie play fullback and Spence play number 11. He has pace, takes players on with his dribbling skill, can't get back and defend. Ange Ball says, therefore, Frank will go strong as possible. Full strength. Come on, you Spurs. I'm glad we all agree on that one today. Kissin says, we miss Romero. He's our best player. Tyler says, Def better defender than Udogie. William Webb says, one second. J-Mac says, surprised if Udogie starts, but for balance and how we set up, he is more suited to the left-hand side. Tyler says, Udogie gets forward, but no end product. Rarely ever puts the right ball in. I get what you're saying in that one, but I'd argue, what end product do we see from Jed Spence in the final third as well? We don't see an awful lot from him in the final third as well, and that's purely because he doesn't really trust his left foot. He's constantly looking to check in on the right all the time. And when you are doing that and you're sort of turning into the traffic rather than trying to evade it, it is hard to sort of come up with that end product. But what I will say is he was given a chance against Wolves on the right-hand side. He didn't get forward. He didn't really do much to help Kudus down that right-hand side going forward. And for me, I was a little bit let down because I was really looking forward to seeing him on the right-hand side. I was like, if he can get as far forward as he does on the left-hand side, I'm interested to see what he can do on his natural side, on his natural foot. I was very underwhelmed with his attacking performance, sort of against Wolves that night, Tyler. And that's why I'd argue with Jed Spence and Udogie, there hasn't been a lot of end product from either of them, on that one, if we're just being fair on the situation. But I would argue, I do think Jed Spence probably has a little bit more. I think he's shown that. I remember against Southampton last year, was it last year or the year before? See, that's what I'm saying. Every year's rolling into one now. When Postecoglou gave Jed Spence a chance down the right-hand side, I think he opened up the game within 2 minutes. I think he put an assist in behind and stuff like that. So he can do it. It's just I haven't really seen a lot of it from him this season, T. Big up, Patricia. Good to see you in the house. Hopefully you're keeping well. And then we also have El Tal Cockerel about to tuck into my Turkish opposite stadium. Well, you go and enjoy that bit of Turkish food today, my man, and then you go and enjoy the game. You must have got a season ticket this year, Jose. Did you? You seem to be at every game this year, every home game. Big up, Jose. Good to see you in the building, and hopefully you're keeping well. And a big day out today, my man. An absolute big day out. But look, why we've got Jose in the building, another one that's going to today's game, Dermo. I mean, let's have a chat about just quickly around the atmosphere today, because look, it is worth mentioning that our home form isn't great. It hasn't been great. It's not just down on Thomas Frank, by the way. Let's be fair on the problem. It long extended under Ange Postecoglou, and it's one of them. The longer it goes on, the harder it is to sort of get out of it, because you've got the players that probably aren't looking forward to playing at home at the minute because they know if they're not going to be playing this free, fast, attacking style of football, fans sort of start moaning and groaning and stuff like that. And, fans are sort of sitting back waiting to be entertained by the team, and they're paying big money to be there and stuff. So it's sort of a bit of a two-edged sword right now in that regard. But look, in general, with it being a derby game, Stevie mentioned it earlier on, what we done to Arsenal under Conte, we really made that stadium a fortress that night. It really sort of eclipsed what it can be. And I think, but the difference that night is everyone was behind it. We were on a massive run. You would beat Arsenal. All of a sudden, you're going to get into top 4. You're going to qualify for the Champions League. And everyone was together. But look, in general, how important is it today? I get fans can sit there and say, I want to be entertained. But there are certain games a season where it's like, look, regardless of what's going on, put it aside. It's a fucking London derby. How important is that atmosphere that, today in terms of setting an environment and for the players to be able to go and thrive in today?
It's extremely important. And I've got this attitude, Dave. You buy your ticket, you go and support the team, good or bad. I'm going on the 6th of December to see Brentford. I'm going to start singing from minute 1 to minute 90. You know what I'm like when I'm at games, Dave. You're like you. We give it all for 90 minutes or 90 plus minutes. And that's what everyone has to do today. I get it that some fans probably want to be entertained by the team, but you've got to make the atmosphere as well. The players depend on you as well. As much as we depend on the team depend on the fans to make it a raucous atmosphere. You look at Bodo last year, Dave. That was the last time I think I've seen the stadium in full flight. It's the London derby. Let's make it hostile as humanly possible, toxic without going over the line. It's so important. I don't think it's Tottenham, Dave. I think it's football in general. I think it's Premier League in general. That most stadiums are not like they used to be, and I don't know why. I don't know why Tottenham are trying it with the drum and with the trumpet. I wish they put something in your man's trumpet, because he rarely gets on my goat. But we it's not like it was in the old days, Dave, like it was 2-3 years ago, where everyone was one and the fans would go there and start singing "We Are Spurs" and "Come on, you Spurs," and the atmosphere was rocking. The stadium, I don't think the stadium's built for that. It's not like White Hart Lane. White Hart Lane, every game was buzzing. I used to go to White Hart Lane a lot, and it was buzzing every game. I've never seen a good atmosphere at that stadium anytime I've gone there, Dave. I don't know if you have ever since you've gone there, but I've never felt a good atmosphere there. So
I think
it's down to the fans, but it's also down to the team, but it's also down to the fans to help the team in their difficult moments to give them, be the 12th man, give them the bit of that lift, because sometimes the players need it from the fans. Sometimes they need the fans to give them the little bit of an extra energy. Say with 10 minutes to go or 5 minutes to go, and we're 1-0, we're 1-1, and we know we're on the ascendancy, and the players are feeling a bit flat. Well, it's down to the fans to get behind them, pump up the atmosphere a little bit, give them players another 5% energy. Right, come on, guys, the fans are with us. We can go and win this. We need more of that. But
I do worry, though, Dermo. I do worry that.
Worry.
I do understand what you're saying in terms of, if it's a tight game with 10 minutes to go at home, fans get off your seats and, stuff like that. Fully understand that, and I fully get where you're coming from. But I think in the whole sort of thing around the atmosphere, I constantly see fans getting the blame. At the end of it, there's been a lot of fan-led groups that have tried to get in contact with the club, try to create singing sections, try to sort out the atmosphere in the stadium. But there's never really been, a handout or an extension from the club in really trying to address the problem with the fans. So it's sort of like, I know a lot of people are sort of going at the fans, but I think it should be more directed at the club, because there's been so many different fan groups that have tried to, work with the club in terms of trying to improve the atmosphere, and the club have sort of turned a lot of them away. The very odd time the club allowed them to set up tifos and stuff like that, but the club have not gone a long way to helping the fans in terms of creating that atmosphere. And I don't quite understand it, because at the end of the day, they've got panels at the top of the stadium that push the noise back down into the stadium. It's designed to keep them around. I've done a tour, and they described it in great detail, in terms of the length they went to in terms of trying to generate a massive atmosphere with this Tottenham stadium. You look at the big wall that they've built to try and replicate what they do at Dortmund. But then when they got into the stadium, fans were moved away from where they're used to sitting at White Hart Lane around the same people and stuff, and you would argue they don't want fans being boisterous within the stadium and stuff like that. That's why they're not, communicating with these fans and stuff like that. It's almost like in years they want to just beat the crowd down to accept, look, it's an entertainment value. Same with the football, just like the music of boxing. You turn up, hopefully the result goes in your way. Whereas I'm hoping this is a massive chance for the Lewis family to extend that olive branch and say, look, we've got a fantastic stadium that was purposely built to try and turn it into one of the most hostile atmospheres to come in European football, in world football. Let's start working with the fans. Let's start engaging with them. Let's start hearing ideas from people that go to the game week in, week out. But right now, all I hear is, fellow fans and managers and players and stuff putting everything on the fans. But no one's talking about the amount of times they've been turned down by the club, not wanting to extend the olive branch and actually help them improve the atmosphere.
I just quick, Steve, just before, because I've got to jump off, and just want to make one quick thing. Sorry. If you notice White Hart Lane, it was rarely impacted. White Hart Lane was tight. The crowd was on top of the pitch. It was built for atmosphere. It was built to generate an atmosphere within the ground. Daniel Levy, when he built the new stadium, as lovely as it is, he said, I tried to do the same what we had at the old White Hart Lane. He didn't get it right. And I understand he wanted to do this south wall, what we have at Dortmund. Well, why not keep it? If you wanted to build a new stadium, keep it to how it was, near enough to how it was before. Because it was tight, it was impacted, it was close to the ground. You felt the fans were on top of you at White Hart Lane, and that built for a better atmosphere. I just don't feel when they build these new stadiums now, they don't build it for atmosphere. They build it because they want to have the big.
No, but this is the thing,
but
ours was purposely built to create atmosphere. They put in
it hasn't worked.
Yeah, exactly. That's my whole point. Like, I do get it hasn't worked. You're saying that a lot of these stadiums, the new builds, that they're taking the fans as close as they were, in a much smaller stadium, which is natural. A bigger building, it's like a bigger house. You're going to feel like you're further away than everybody else just because the house is bigger than when you are in a cramped house and stuff like that. That's just naturally going to happen the bigger the sort of stadium gets. But I think the big point that you're missing here, though, Dermo, is the amount of money they put into that stadium and thought process behind it in terms of designs and stuff like that to create a massive atmosphere. But yet, since it's any Spurs fans that go, it doesn't matter whether you're traveling in or whether you're there every week, everyone has a complaint about the atmosphere. But, and it's sort of like everyone's just putting it on all the fans all the time. But if the club put that amount of money into the stadium to help try and generate and make it become one of the most hostile atmospheres in world football, let's not forget that South Stand is built off Dortmund. The reason why is because they looked at that atmosphere and said, well, that can help us at home. That can help generate extra points a season and stuff like that. But then because it's not being generated, everyone's looking at each other. But no one's talking about all the metal fan groups that have been set up to try and help it that the club have turned down.
Yeah, but I also think that for the most part, we're also talking about the corporatization of the Premier League, where a lot of these big clubs essentially operate like NFL teams. They give the impression that the only thing the fans are good for is the disposable income for them to pay these exorbitant ticket prices. To come watch. Specifically, what's interesting about this is, Jeremy, you were mentioning about White Hart Lane, but the reality is times have changed. And at that point in White Hart Lane, the fans weren't disillusioned by this ownership group. They weren't beat down. And over the course of the last 8 years, going through the things that we've going through.
Just very quickly on that.
Hold on.
Sorry, just very quickly on that. Yeah. Just very quickly on that. Sorry, just very quickly on that. Fans were beat down in the 90s, and we still generated great atmosphere.
Sure.
So
but the difference is they weren't raising ticket prices every single year to the point where it almost drove certain fans away, right? You talk about the fact that there is no communication between fan groups and the in the club. Well, that was by design, right? Because I get the impression that they don't want tifo. They don't want these type of raucous atmospheres because it takes away from the the traveling fan and some of these other streams of revenue, which Tottenham Hotspur absolutely depend on top of their season ticket base, right? And we're seeing it, we're seeing it all across the league where for the most part, a lot of different fan groups feel like their club doesn't belong to them anymore, as they did 25 years ago, right? Because when you look at with the way that some of these teams operate, they really do give the impression that they could give a shit about some of their most loyal supporters. They just don't care. And then you ask yourself, how come we don't have a raucous atmosphere? It's because they don't want it. Yeah, Dave, I mean, you're absolutely right. They built the stadium to have that type of atmosphere, but then they don't allow tifo. Yeah. They don't allow some of these other things. And it's like, okay, are you trying to protect yourself against maybe a return of hooliganism, or is it because they actually want some of these traveling supporters coming to the ground? They want these international fans to come pay the ridiculous ticket prices to come see it. Just saying, man, it's the corporatization of the Premier League.
Yeah, look, I think there's other people that agree with you in that regard. I think, look, because of hooliganism in years gone by, and like you look at some other leagues across the world, they're allowed to drink beer in the stand and stuff like that. They're not in the Premier League and stuff like that. And obviously that's because there was trouble in years gone by and stuff like that. But I almost think they sort of haven't trusted football crowds to be able to, stuff like that. Like you come here to a League of Ireland game, you go to a lot smaller stadium. The atmosphere is absolutely incredible. And these guys, could be 200 of them standing there in the piss and the rain, but there's flares. There's absolutely not allowed to bring any of them anywhere near the Tottenham Stadium and stuff like that. And it's sort of like, I do agree with you. It can sort of dampen down the atmosphere. One thing I loved about that Arsenal one around the content, the amount of flares, even around the ground outside, people holding them and stuff like that, help build up the atmosphere beforehand and stuff. But I do agree with you. I do think there's a lot that you can't do within the stadium or bring into the stadium and stuff that, obviously I understand safety precautions and stuff like that, but sure, there are stuff designed to sort of dampen down the atmosphere. I do get what you're saying, but look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a big game. I know there has been a couple of fan groups that have set up meeting points to try and generate atmosphere in the concourse today. And look, anytime I've been in the concourse, the atmosphere has been absolutely fantastic. Even better after a game when you win. It is one of the best places to be on planet Earth when you've just got thousands of people pouring out of the South Stand, banging on everything, singing the same song. It's an absolutely amazing place to be. Hopefully that atmosphere generated in the concourse will find its way out onto the stands today. But look, it's Chelsea. Every Spurs fan hate Chelsea. So naturally, I think the atmosphere will be there. And I think it'll be there for the first 5 or so minutes. But then it is on Thomas Frank and the team to match that, to build off that, show some bravery, go after Chelsea. That will keep fans on side. If we go out there and there's a massive atmosphere and all of a sudden we start showing Chelsea a lot of respect, I don't want to hear fans being blamed. I don't want to hear fans being moaned, because at the end of the day, it was there, but they will react to what the team's doing. If we show them too much respect, you will dampen down that atmosphere. So it's very important that the team build off that atmosphere that will naturally be there because of the hatred between the two teams and really go for fucking Chelsea today. But speaking of going for them, I mean, look, Chelsea do love to dominate possession under Maresca, so it's going to be difficult to try and get the ball off them and that. But look, I think there's been a big this is one of the big talking points around the fan base, right? That the football hasn't always been easy on the eye. And when the goals don't come, it can look pretty rough. Now, there are some who think, some of the approach play has been good. We just lack the quality up front to sort of finish it off. Now, I'm more on that side of things. I don't think we're god-awful in possession. I think there was a period, but I think naturally with Mawani coming in up front, kudos, sort of with the amount of assists he's got this season. I think he's got some of the most assists in the Premier League. By the way, Tyler, you didn't mention that stat earlier, by the way. He's got, I think he was up there joint with the most assists in the Premier League. That's one reason to start him against Newcastle, because he contributes 2 goals. But, and I know Tyler sort of agrees with me on this, because we did have a conversation about this during the week, that he also doesn't think some of the build-up play is bad. And, to that point, there's a clip circulating around social media there after the Newcastle game, built out from the back, played through the midfield, a couple of 4 players linked up, ball was put across, Richarlison kicks fresh air. And there has been a few moments like that this season. So it's sort of like, but where I struggle with it is, we know Richarlison and Johnson ain't good enough. Yeah, but they were starters last year. They're not starters this year. They're only starting because Thomas Frank is picking them to start. At the end of the day, he has had, the likes of Kudos, Xavi, players with Simmons. We all signed to help try and improve in that department. So I think it's a fair question to ask. Is Frank making the most of what he's been given then? Or maybe is the system holding back, for those who believe there isn't really any great patterns of play and we're just relying on set pieces?
It's a good. I let Steve go on that. I've got to jump off in a minute anyway, Dave. So I let Steve take that because I've got to jump off now because I've got to go on to something else. But
No problem.
thanks for having me on, Bud.
I appreciate
It's,
you.
it's interesting, right? Is he getting the most out of the pieces that he has? I would like to say yes. I think you and I had both agrees. You and I both agree on this. If we're going to specifically talk about certain players, the question of whether or not he should be using Xavi Simons on the left hand side versus underneath, just for him to be able to get a little bit of comfortability and also have the space to actually utilize his strong space, utilize his strong suits. Yes, maybe that might be highlight one specific player, but I think for the most part, when you actually look at this team top to bottom and you look at the pieces that we currently don't have because of injury, I would actually say that he is getting a very good chunk of it right, because I actually looked at this team last year, and especially when it was very clear and evident we didn't have the players to play that type of system that Ange Postecoglou wanted to play, and when he went more pragmatic, all of a sudden the team looked actually pretty good. We were actually getting forward and scoring goals, and we were playing the kind of football that we all thought we might be able to play. Thomas Frank almost came out and kind of doubled down on it a little bit. And I actually think the way that he's playing actually suits this team, because some of our best players are obviously more defensively inclined, whether that be Van de Ven, Romero, Porro, whatever the case may be. I just think when I look at certain midfields, we're better. We're a better team lined up the way that we're playing. And the only issue that it is in that forward line, because we can't just finish off. We can't finish off certain certain plays. We're lacking in certain departments when it comes to that. But again, I think that actually ends up taking care of itself, whether that's the January window or next summer. But I think when I look at the season so far through the 14 games, I'm not going to go that far to say that Thomas Frank got it wrong, because I actually think he set up this team, to play to their strengths versus their weaknesses. Yeah. That was kind of an Ange Postecoglou issue.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely. I think it's a fair point you make there. I think, look, he had to come in here. He had to bring defensive stability. I also think he was well aware the likes of Richarlison, Tell, Udebert, Johnson. That at times he would be limited this season. At times, so he has to find another way of going and trying to win games. And at the end of the day, he's brought the set piece to it, which is something that Ange Postecoglou didn't. He didn't really want to focus on set pieces. Like, if we can't score by playing beautiful football, then we're not going to score at all. Whereas Thomas Frank says, "Oh, fuck that. I don't care about beautiful football at times. Right. We don't have the players to play it. Fuck it long into the box." And I absolutely don't mind that. Right. But, one thing I used to get annoyed with Postecoglou sometimes is like, why do we keep rolling? Can we not just get the ball in the box and get players after it? That's how you're going to score your goals, and I think I like that about Thomas Frank. Sometimes with throw-ins, you can get one up at right outside the opposition's box, and then all of a sudden it's past, it ends back up at your goalkeeper's feet, and it's a waste. You've done all that effort to get up there just to pass it all the way back. For me, sometimes, no problem throwing, get it into the box. But look, I'd argue, I think in general, some of the build-up play has been good. I think he has been, although Udebert has probably looked the brightest out of the most disappointed players this year, still hasn't been a lot of end product. Teller's let him down. Yeah. Garrison has let him down. Johnson has let him down. But the reality is he hasn't had to rely on some of them week in, week out. He has had Kudos, which has been a massive addition that we didn't have last year. Xavi Simons, I would argue, I think he's got that one a little bit wrong. I think, he knows that there's clearly a physical issue there in terms of trying to acclimatise and adapt to the Premier League. And if Xavi Simons naturally keeps drifting out to the left-hand side, at what point does Frank go, well, no one else has taken an opportunity off the left. I'm going to put him out there. That's clearly where he feels like he's most comfortable right now, picking up the ball. Let's put him out there consistently, and hopefully then the end product will come. And then once he acclimatizes, then I can look to move him sort of into that sort of cam role. I do think maybe he has probably got that situation a little bit wrong. And I think Frank realizes that, the fact that he keeps chopping them out to the left, into the middle, stuff like that, and the fact that he keeps taking them in and out of the lineup as well. So I'd argue, you can sit here and
I
say
will
that
add,
the players limitate us, but we've thrown more money at it than what we have had in years gone by, to try and alleviate the problem. So I think it is a fair question to ask, is he maybe getting the best out of them? But I would also say with Mwani now being available, we do look better going forward. It means the striker is suddenly linking up with players, bringing others in, and then if we can just get maybe Kulusevski back, because Madison is a long way off. Madison probably won't see any game time this season. But if we can get Kulusevski back and he can be the answer down the left-hand side, and you can acclimatise Xavi in the middle or put Kuli in the number 10 and put Xavi out left, all of a sudden you're looking at an attack and you go, these players do have the ability to finish off the moves.
And I will say, to add to that, right, you're 100% right about Xavi. You and I both agree on this, where I think he also got it wrong, was taking Pap Sarr out of the starting 11, because we looked a little bit more dangerous with Pap Sarr in the starting 11, and I don't understand what the need was for to drop him out of the 11. And I also think he possibly got that one wrong as well too.
Thanks for having me on, Dave. I am jumping off now. I didn't want to be rude and just jump straight off. I just want to say thanks very much for having me on again. I really appreciate it. Always do. Big up to you, Steve. Big up to everyone in the chat. Hit the like and subscribe on Steve's channel, on Dave's channel as well. And if you want to stick one on mine, I would appreciate it. But yeah, do it definitely on Dave. But big up, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show. Dave, I'll speak to you over the weekend and enjoy the game.
Over the weekend, my man. Really appreciate your time today, Dermot.
No
Have
problem.
a good. Right. Come on, you Spurs. Hopefully we win today.
Yeah, come on, you Spurs. 2-0 win for me, by the way. Score prediction 2-0.
2-0. Absolutely love it.
I'm going conservative. See you later. Bye.
See you later, Dermo. Guys, I did put Dermo's link here in the chat, so make sure you get on that, get across and smash the subscribe on Dermo's channel. Take a couple of comments here from the chat and we'll keep kicking on, myself and Stevie. We've got less known, says Dave. Spurs are dependent upon set piece goals. Is this dependency a sustainable strategy long term? What I will say is Arsenal are top of the league. They've been heavily dependent on set piece goals for quite some time. Brentford, heavily dependent on set piece goals for quite some time. I've sort of punched above the weight. Look, should it be the only thing you're sort of capitalizing on? No. Do we want to see us be more fluid in attack and finishing off more moves, from open play? Yeah, of course we do. But if you don't have that ability, set pieces right now is proven very, very fruitful for a lot of teams. And for me, look, I would argue, how long have we spent moaning that we haven't prioritized set pieces and stuff like that? At least we are looking at the minor details that can make a massive difference. But I'd also argue, I think naturally football is being sort of pushed into more of a set piece game. The bar for free kicks is so low right now. The whistle's being blown every fucking 30 seconds for something or the other, which means then you're picking up more free kicks than ever before. When you've got teams sitting defensive and stuff like that, you're getting more throw-ins, a lot more corner kicks and stuff like that. And if you don't have, I'd argue a lot of the players now, there's very few mavericks left in world football now compared to what I used to watch growing up and stuff like that, which means in general, you're not seeing a lot of great attack and play across the board in football, or a lot of mavericks, a lot of skill or stuff like that. So naturally, because of the players that have been coming through in years gone by, and that's down to how the academies have coached them, that it's all about keeping possession, coaching the risk out of players, coaching the individuality out of players and stuff like that. You've sort of lost your Ronaldinho's, your JJ Okochas, Zizou's, players like that. You've lost all of them now. So what you're getting is there's not really too much difference between a lot of what you're seeing. So naturally, the game is being geared more to set pieces, and that's why you're seeing a lot more teams focus on them now. So that's where I would argue. So I think it's good to be good at set pieces. And then with injuries and players coming back and getting full fitness in Mwani's case, with the better players on the pitch, then hopefully you will see the other side added to it. And if you can combine both, then there's no reason why you can't push on and challenge for honours.
Oh, 100%, right? Was anybody upset when Mikey Van de Ven bagged a double off of two corners? I don't think so. Was anybody upset when Rodrigo Betancourt nicked that early goal against Aston Villa off a set piece? Absolutely not, right? As a matter of fact, that kind of set the tone.
Were Arsenal upset when they beat us from a set piece in the North London Derby last year? Nope.
So from that standpoint, it's like that. Unfortunately, as of right now, until something changes within our forward line, this is our opportunity to actually get goals. And from that standpoint, it looks like we're also organized to our strengths on set pieces to the point where it's actually becoming it's becoming I guess you can say an identity of this club. And as long as as long as that is being if that message is being delivered every single training opportunity with Thomas Frank and his coaching staff to the players, that this is an actual focal point of our attack, we actually have the players who are put in very good, strong situations in order to nick those goals. So at the end of the day, regardless of how the goals come, who gives a shit if it's coming from set pieces? And yeah, I would think that it is definitely sustainable long term.
And look, I think it's sort of like when we see this stat bounding about, I think almost it's looked upon as negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it should be. I think it should be praised. But yes, of course, it raises other questions, right? You start looking, okay, what we like from open play. But in general, I think we were sort of up there with some goals from open play, bizarrely enough. But I would argue we played a lot of the easier teams at the start of the season and stuff like that. So, maybe that stat might even out after we come out of this period against the bad teams. But we got to stop looking at how good we are from set pieces and how efficient we are from set pieces as something to knock. It should be something that's praised. But then it also does raise questions of certain areas. And I think that's then where you should be looking and going, can we add that to this instead of just going, oh, we're only a set piece team and stuff like that in general. But big up, let's know. Good to see you, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. Good to see Kerry King joining us today as well. Hopefully you're keeping well, Kerry. We've also got Ed Case in the house, 1882. Big up, Ed, telling people to smash that like button. Something we don't do enough here. I am a bit of an airhead, a scatterhead, if you like. So if you could, please smash that like button for us. It really helps us out. At the end of the day, Tottenham versus Chelsea with our record, our home record, our record against Chelsea, it is David versus Goliath. That's what it's like for this channel in terms of the YouTube world. So please help us out by smashing that like button. Would really help out. Niall O'Connor says, if we get Semenyo and have Kudus there, then you would love to see the Ghana fans in. They are gold at the World Cup, lol. Look, to be honest with you, I think South American fans, fans from Africa in general going to World Cups and stuff, I absolutely love off it. It's the dancing, it's the singing. It doesn't matter how it's going. Personally, I would love to be like that. But if my team lose, even when Ireland lose, even though I sort of know we're losing going into the games, I still find it very hard to accept after. Whereas fair play to, a lot of them fans, they can just sort of, look, we're here for the occasion, and stuff like that. So fair play. But I mean, look, Semenyo would be absolutely a huge coup if we could get this guy in. He is ripping teams apart. For me, he's very similar to Kudus. He's not afraid to get on the ball, wants to go and make something happen, wants to be that maverick, wants to take the headlines. For me, I like players like that. Semenyo one side, Kudus the other, Mwani through the middle, Xavi in the number 10. All of a sudden, Tottenham are looking like a different animal. And if we can retain the set pieces alongside that, then all of a sudden you're a top team. Big up Niall O'Connor. We've got Leighton Evelyn in the house. Good to see you.
I was going to say that the interesting thing is where Bournemouth is going to be in the January transfer window, because if they're still kicking on in the top 6, there's no way we're getting Semenyo until this summer.
Yeah, I just don't think Semenyo is on offer. I think Bournemouth done pretty smart there in the summer. I think they realised, look, we can sell off the goalkeeper, sell off the back line, we'll recreate that. But the hardest thing to do at this level is have a goal scorer in the team, someone that can rip teams apart. And that's why they've kept Semenyo. They're going to try and put everything else in place. Yeah. And I think then come the summer, it's going to be very hard to ignore teams coming calling for Semenyo. But they will not sell him in January. That is not going to happen. They're going to use him till the end of the season because he's their main source of goals. If they sell him, all of a sudden their form will drop off. They'll fall further down the table because they lose the ability to be able to put the ball in the back.
And their ticket sales as well, too. And their ticket sales at the Vitality as well, too.
Yeah.
100%.
Spot on. Big up Rooty too as well. Good to see you. Says, surely we're dependent on set pieces because we don't have a decent strikers lot. Yeah, look, I think it's a fair point to make. But I think people are ignoring the fact that we have Kudus added to the situation. Xavi Simons brought in. Colin Mwani's been brought in. We've thrown more money at it than what we have in years gone by. There's more strength in depth in the forward line than what there was last season. And I think that's one thing that no one's really talking about. Is it perfect? No. Should it be looking a bit better and producing a bit more than what it did last season? Yes, purely for the fact the money that we've spent on it. You know, that's what I would say on that one, Rooty too. But good to see you,
Mhm.
man. We also have Q7. It's hard to say. I feel a lot of our players just aren't good enough. However, I also feel he should be encouraging the team to take more progressive passes. I think we do too much sideways. I think, look, I do understand in terms of, like, you know, a lot of the sideways passes can piss people off. And I would argue, I don't think we see enough balls put in behind for players to get on the end of, to stretch the opposition, force them back at times. That's why I think a lot of teams are very comfortable to come and press Tottenham, try and get aggressive with us, because we don't put balls in behind. So they know there's a huge opportunity to turn us over. And I think at some point we got to start looking at putting more balls in behind, mix up the variation of our forward player. Like, I think when it works, it can look good. And I think, you know, I don't subscribe. I think we do create some good moves. We just don't finish off enough of them. But do we create enough to really go and win games in general? I would
No.
like to see more created from open play. I think some of them moves are very few and far in between at times.
Yeah, but that's the difference between Danso and Romero, right? Romero actually does take, Romero does take those chances up the field, and he will ping balls. And same thing, same thing with Porro. And I noticed that when Porro is also playing next to Romero as well too. When there is cover against the press, Porro will take chances long as well too.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair. Absolutely fair. But Q7, look, I think there has to be a massive realization as well. Like, we're not good enough to sit in teams half and move the ball around, keep pressure on them, because we don't create enough in general as the game goes by, or enough decent opportunities. Like, one of the shots registered during the week on target was Danzo, who basically passed it into goalkeeper's hands from the edge of the box and stuff like that. And look, I think the big problem I have is our defenders seem to be doing everything in this team. You know, and the defensive midfielders seem to be scoring all the goals, creating all the goals, and keeping the clean sheets. You know, at what point is some of these forward players going to stick their head above water and say, well, I'm also going to start contributing and stuff like that? But saying that, though, Q7, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we also got to understand Frank looks to control every aspect of the game. And I think it's calculated, you know, by trying to keep possession, because at the end of the day, you don't want to take stupid risks. You end up giving away the ball, and then you're being pushed back and stuff like that. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think Frank is trying to keep ball a little bit more, at Tottenham Hotspur. So I wouldn't look at that as something to knock. At the end of the day, I don't mind having possession. It's just I don't think we're ruthless enough with the possession that sometimes we do have.
Right.
But I would argue that was the same problem under Ange Postecoglou, especially in the first season. I mean, or it was at the start of last season. We went 1-0 up against West Ham, all over them, dominated possession for the whole first half, but never looked like threatening or scoring again after the first goal we scored.
Right.
West Ham came out with 20 minutes to go, said, fuck this, let's go after them, end up winning the game 2-1. We're sitting there going, how did we lose that with all the possession we dominated and stuff? And that just comes down to the four players not doing enough. But again, like I said, he's got more options to pick from than what we had last season in terms of that regard. You know, is he getting Kudos into good enough positions to be able to score more goals and stuff like that? I think they're fair questions to ask. But at the end of the day, like I did say earlier on, you know, you take away the set piece goals, I think Tottenham are up around the top of the table in terms of goals from open play. It's just maybe we're not as pretty on the eye as many Spurs fans want. But I think with Moani getting up to full fitness, if we can get Kulusevski back out on the pitch and all, I think you'll have a bit more quality there, and you will look better in possession moving forward. So I think on that one, unfortunately, we've just got to give it time. I think if Moani comes back, isn't scoring goals, you know, if Kudos still isn't chipping in with more goals, if Xavi Simons still isn't settling after a few months, Kulusevski comes back and he's not contributing, then I think there is massive questions around the system and how we're setting up, and is it set up to get the best out of it? Because to be fair, although I thought Johnson was useless, Postecoglou got the best out of a shit player. He put him in positions where he could go and affect games and score goals. So I think that's where the question comes about. But for me, there are questions I can only really ask within a couple of months' time, you know, a month or two's time, when Moani has more games in his belt, Kulusevski's back, Xavi Simons has had longer and stuff like that. If the same problems persist, then I think it's fair questions to ask. Right now, I think people will always revert back to the injuries and sort of give him that free pass, and I am guilty of that to a certain degree. Stevie, anything else you want to add on that before we move on?
Yeah, like, you know, for me, I think possession is actually quite overrated, right? Because I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Last year we had 65, 68% of possession in most games, and literally did nothing with that possession. one of the things that I also noticed between last year and this year is like we're not getting those inside runs that actually give targets for guys to play balls into the box. And so whenever you see defenders shade over, and the issue is try to play a risky pass forward or play it back or play it sideways, they're going to opt for that backwards pass and they're going to recycle and try to do it all over again, move it from side to side, and then try to figure a way in. Right? You see a lot of central players that are literally just standing around and ball watching. Right? So there, unfortunately, there's just not enough targets to actually play forward and actually take those risks and chances.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I think we're saying the same thing. And Peter, I don't know what you're disagreeing with. I think I'm sort of saying the same thing, that, you do need sort of a Kulu back. Solanke, look, I don't know what's going on with this guy. I've been told it's minor for ages. Then all of a sudden needs a surgery, still not available and stuff like that. But I sort of guess I'm sort of saying the same thing. But I think, Peter, one thing people aren't talking enough about is we brought in Kudos, we brought in Xavi, we brought in Moani. You know what I mean? And look, like I said, I think I'm going to give it another month or two. I think if we get some of these players back, if Moani gets to full fitness, Kulu's back, Solanke ends up getting back, and we're still looking very lackluster forward, then I think the questions do have to go with in terms of the setup going forward. What is the approach plan and stuff like that? Because many fans were in unison. They wanted Moani in here. Everyone wanted Kudos in here. Look, I sort of asked questions whether Xavi Simons was going to come in and be the guy, but a lot of fans did. A lot of fans believed in the quality. So at that point, if you believe in the quality of the players that we brought in, there was big fanfare around them. If they're not contributing a lot, then who do you blame? Do you blame them and go, they're not of the right quality, even though you originally thought that? Or do you maybe look at the way it's setting up? But look, I'm not knocking Frank. Like I said, I'm going to give him time. I think, I've been around the game a long time enough to know that not having someone like Kulusevski, even though many fans for years have been berating him, calling him shit, now all of a sudden he's top class, don't quite understand that. But I've always said Kulu is better than what people think. He would be a massive help. Madison is out for the season, so that is something that Frank is going to have to try and work around. Solanke, again, we don't know. Son's gone. Absolutely spot on. I do agree with you in that regard. And that's why I said I'm going to give it a little bit of time. But I think if some of these players come back and get up to speed, then I do think there will be serious sort of questions to ask in that regard. I mean, look, let's get into maybe what we expect the lineup to be here. I think the lineup will be out in a couple of minutes anyway here. But look, I think we're all expecting Vicario to be back in goal tonight. I mean, if Romero's fit, he probably starts, right?
I would assume so, right? I think I think it's a huge difference between last year in that first Chelsea fixture when Ange absolutely was desperate to get both of those guys back, and of course we saw what happened. I would probably assume that Thomas Frank has slow rolled both Romero and Udogie as well too, to make sure that they're actually 100% fit, 100% ready to go to be able to come right back into this the starting 11. And I would probably assume that if Romero is ready to go, he walks right back in. And again, this is no disrespect to Kevin Danso. I like Kevin Danso, but the quality in which Romero plays is something that's completely night and day different than what Kevin Danso provides. And of course, we just mentioned his contributions to the attack as well too. Me personally, if Romero's ready, he's playing.
Yeah, I think, look, naturally he's captain, right? He walked straight back in. But I think there's a fair argument to make as Danzo maybe played his way into the team, as he forced Frank to maybe go with 3 at the back. Because when you look what we've been trying to do in possession in recent games, we have sort of gone into a back 3 and pushed more bodies sort of forward and stuff. So do you think with Romero coming in that he might keep Danzo in there and sort of do the same here again today?
I would think that was the reason why we didn't, why we didn't try to go to a back 3, because we didn't have the luxury of having Christian Romero. Yesterday on my pre-match buildup, I was talking about the idea of potentially maybe even a tactical switch. Now that a Christian Romero is back, and even a potential Destiny Udogie as well too, right? It gives them the leeway to actually do that and set up a little bit different, something that Chelsea probably didn't necessarily prepare for, but also negating some of our weaker points on the pitch and giving a guy like Kudus and Moani the flexibility and the freedom underneath to actually play their game. I'll tell you what, that's a good call, because I was thinking the exact same thing.
No, it'll be very interesting to see if Frank does do that, because at the end of the day, look, I do take your point. Romero is so much better in possession than Kevin Danso. But I would argue, like, although he doesn't have the passing range of a Romero and stuff like that, and I suppose Romero looks more graceful on the ball, although Danso looks very awkward on the ball, he's still competent in possession. You know, in my opinion. But I think what I love most about him is his defensive work. You know, in years gone by, we've heard excuses. They've had to expect centre backs to come in from the cold and perform. Kevin Danzo can do it. It just comes down to having the right quality of players at the end. And what I love about Danzo is he's no nonsense. You go back to that Everton game, head on Everton, most clearances. I think most clearances in a game than since Jan Vertonghen and stuff like that. You know, real old school, no nonsense centre back. Just loves defending, putting these bollocks on the line. And I absolutely love it because it makes a change from years gone by where players were hands behind the back, jockeying backwards almost back into their own net and stuff like that. I really, really like Kevin Danzo, but also, you know, against Chelsea today, if we're not going to be silky in possession, I think there's a question to put him in there so that he can unleash them long throws into the box and stuff like that as well. But look, it'd be interesting to see whether Frank includes the 3 centre-backs in the team today. Guys, in the comments, let me know what you think. Do you think that Thomas Frank could end up doing that today? But look, Stevie, let's go into the midfield. I mean, look, the midfield is going to be absolutely crucial today, no doubt about it. I always make the argument that if you win the midfield battle, 9 times out of 10, you go on to win the game of football. So what 3 would you like to see in that engine room today? And why do you think that combination will work best?
I said it yesterday, and until I see something different in the Premier League, I think it's going to be Polina and Betancourt. Now, again, we have talked ad nauseum about, I guess you could say the deficiencies of what Betancourt doesn't necessarily provide. But I also like to talk about the skill set that he does provide. And again, it almost feels like Thomas Frank understands exactly how to set this team up because he has actually developed quite a nice little partnership with João Polina. They seem to understand their movements. They seem to be on the same page. And it's also I also like Betancourt in possession as well too. A lot of people gloss over the fact of his passing ability, and I also think that dude actually has the ability to break lines with his passing, and we've seen it on occasion sometimes this year. But I also think when you actually have that type of chemistry in a double pivot, you don't necessarily switch off of it. Especially against a team like Chelsea. But that being said, I've been calling now for the 3rd straight week to have Pape Sarr back into the starting 11 because we looked like a different team when he was actually starting, and I have no idea what Thomas Frank was thinking about taking him out. But I think he just adds a different element. He's not afraid to get forward. He's not afraid to make runs. He's actually very good. He's actually very good under pressure as well too. When teams like to try to play that little bit mid block, he seems to have a way to dribble through it and actually make something happen. And for me, I think Pape Sarr, there he is right there. I think Pape Sarr adds a different element and something that right now Xavi Simons doesn't have. And I think it's because Pape Sarr is used to playing in the Premier League, and he understands exactly what he's going to see, which is something that I think Xavi Simons is going to need time to develop. But that being said, I think a midfield 3 of Polina, Betancourt, and Pape Sarr make the most sense.
Well, look, here is the lineup. The lineup is out. Vicario is in goals. Kevin Danzo and Van de Ven, centre-backs. No Christian or Romero is on the bench. So Romero probably not fit enough for this game, or maybe Frank's playing the long game with Romero. Maybe he's not 100% fit and doesn't want to risk him. But Danzo and Van de Ven will be your centre-back partnership with Pedro Porro at right back, Jed Spence at left back. Then you move into the midfield. You have Paulinho and Bergvall as your double pivot. Then you will be having Spence, and it looks like, Sarr and Bergvall may be playing as your 2 number 10s with Mawani up front and Mawani up front. I think that's that's it. That's the light. And Kudos down the right-hand side as well. So Bergvall would probably act like a left winger out of possession, but in possession, you'll see him sort of move inside like he did against Newcastle with Jed Spence sort of operating down that left-hand side. I think that's his strongest lineup. You happy with that one today? Interestingly, although back in Xavi Simons in the press conference, he doesn't start.
Interesting. And I wonder if it's because the last 2 matches he started and actually had a nice little, nice little chunk of minutes over the last 3 weeks. And so from that, from that standpoint, it seems like Xavi's going to be that type of guy that's going to be coming on in the 55th, 60th minute if things don't necessarily go right. I'm not necessarily surprised to see Romero out. Obviously, you mentioned the strong suit of a guy like Kevin Danso, but that being said, I would probably assume that we're going to see him at some point. But I actually like this because to me, I'm looking at this lineup and I'm thinking, okay, well, wait a second, is this actually going to be what we saw a little bit of Everton when we actually did go through a back 3 and we were pushing high with 2 10s underneath, and Jed Spence was the lone winger on the left. To me, that's the read I get from this one, and I would think that, yeah, I would say that it's a pretty strong 11. I'm going to be a little bit worried about that left-hand side, but that being said, I actually think this might be the best 11 that we possibly could put out, considering the last 3 weeks of the minutes that some of these guys have played.
Yeah. Look, I would argue, I think, look, no Romero, of course, your captain, your leader, and look, he loves these sort of games, right? I think, look, at the end of the day, I understand he's definitely not fit enough to start, or as Frank would have started him. You just don't rest your captain, or you don't leave him on the bench if he's fit enough to start. So that's obviously the reason behind that. It'd be interesting to see how we get on without Romero on the pitch, though. You know, Mickey Van de Ven as captain today, of course, has stepped in Romero's absence. And I think he's been fantastic. I actually think you're seeing, you know, Van de Ven really emerge as a leader within that group. But look, you know, backline, goalkeeper, the double pivot, I'm really, really happy with. Sure. Bergvall, Xavi Simons one. It's much of a muchness at this moment in time. Look, I know many people probably would have preferred him to stick with Xavi Simons, but I think when you look at London Derby, the first half an hour is all about physicality. And I think that's probably why he's gone with Bergvall over Xavi Simons today. I would guess that's the call. And Xavi Simons will come in later on in the game when it's a bit more open because players are tired and stuff, and maybe, you know, hopefully contribute in that regard. But I think he's gone with Bergvall because of the physicality today. Yep. And that's why I think he's gone with him. But look, I mean, it'll be a 4-2-3-1 out of possession with Vicario. Like I said, Vicario on goals, Danzo, Van de Ven centre-back, Porro right-back, Spence left-back. Then you'll have your midfield three. Well, your double pivot, first of all, of Paulini and Bentancur. Sarah playing the number 10, Bergvall off the left, Kudos off the right, Muani through the middle. But as we know, in possession, that will change. Porro will come in and make a third centre-back. Spence will turn into a winger. Kudos will keep out wide. Bergvall will push inside and play as a number 10 alongside Papa Matasar. So that's effectively what you are going to see today. On the bench, you've got Anthony Kinski, who didn't cover himself in glory against Newcastle. Xavi Simons, Richarlison. I think many people have to understand he probably is going to get minutes off the bench today, regardless whether you want to see him or not. Muani probably has about 60-65 minutes in him. Matisse Tell, Destiny Adogi, obviously, again, probably deemed not fit enough to start. Romero, Johnson, Udebert, and Scarlett. So that is your starting lineup for today's game. I mean, Stevie, look, let's get your score prediction. I'm going to have a quick look in the chat and see what people's thoughts are on the lineup. There's some people complaining about it. I don't really have too much of a problem with the lineup, to be fair. Like, look, obviously you look at it and go, where's the creativity coming from? Why not Xavi over Bergvall? But like I said, the first half an hour of this game, it is going to be absolutely ferocious. Right. It's going to be physical. You can't have a guy that's going to get bullied on the ball and potentially being a risk and ended up in the back of your own net. Look, I get Bergvall also loses a hell of a lot of possession. I fully understand that. But but one of the things stuck in a lot more than what Xavi Simons will. So I think that's probably the thinking around that decision.
Right, and he's also the you're absolutely right. He's also the guy that's not afraid to get himself into a challenge, and he's actually going to try to win the ball back. One of the things I like about him is when he does come to make a touch, the first thing he does is turn upfield, and he's looking to make something happen. Now, regardless of how that ends up turning out, that's something that we kind of lack is guys that are actually trying to get forward, trying to be progressive, and actually trying to make plays. On top of the fact that, that dude kind of plays with blinders on and he's not afraid to kind of mix it up, right? So from that standpoint, I think you nailed that one right on the head.
Appreciate that. Look, let's take a couple of comments here from the chat. Let's see where people are sort of feeling in general towards it, and then we will end off. We will get ready for the watch along. Silver Spurfer says, Bergvall and Sarr both like to drive forward. No, absolutely. And look, like I've argued for quite some time, I think Papa Matasar should be an automatic name on the starting 11. At the end of the day, we sit here and say the forward line is absolutely crap. But Papa Matasar was playing, the amount of balls he turned over that led to goals from open play and stuff like that. So I didn't understand why he was taken out of the team for a period. And I'm glad he's back in, because as soon as he came off the bench against Everton, he scored our first goal from open play, in a while. So, for me, I think he's infectious. But not only that, he has the industrious work to be able to get back, and fucking get stuck in and muck in as well. So on that one, and with Bergvall, he does like to break forward as well. I think, look, one thing I've always tried to highlight with Bergvall, I think he gets a massive free pass from it within the fan base. I love the energy that he brings to a game. I love how much he wants to go and affect the game. Out of possession, he's constantly looking to get stuck in. In possession, constantly looking to get on the ball. But one free pass everyone gives him, he gives away the ball a hell of a lot, an awful lot. He's very, like Xavi Simons, when he gets bullied on the ball, he also gives it away. But I just think, with Xavi Simons out of possession, he doesn't really offer you too much. Bergvall will get stuck in, and I think that's probably why he's gone with that. But both will break forward. Both in possession will sit in them number 2-10 spots and look to sort of maybe get in the box alongside Mawani and stuff like that. Or that's the hope anyway. Ronnie says, another boring game again. I am starting to question Frank. Yeah, but I get what you're saying, right? I do get what you're saying. I do think there are some question marks that fans have, but I think many fans are going to give him a little bit of time and patience to see if he can answer them questions. But what I will say is, we've been boring for a long time. This isn't just Thomas Frank problem. We're born under Ange Postecoglou. A lot of times we're born under Conte, under Nuno, under Jose. We've been boring for a long, long time. But we're even more boring now than maybe in some of them years because we don't have Kane and Son. That's why we're so boring. We don't have two magical players that can make anything happen at any given moment as soon as you give them the ball. We just don't possess that right now. And I think, like I've said, a couple of weeks ago, every game, Spurs fans have to get up for the fight. Every game is going to be an absolute dogfight. Are we going to play teams off the park? No.
Nope.
But, we're in every single game. So every single game is going to be a scrap. It's going to be a fight. And I think Spurs fans have to maybe realize that. Leighton Evelyn says it will be sideways, backwards passing from this midfield. I think Bentancur gets a bit of a hard rap in that regard. I think, people get on to Bentancur's case. He scored one and set up one over the last couple of games and stuff like that. That's creativity right there for you. I think, again, a lot of times I think Pellegrini and Bentancur do punt that ball forward. The ball eventually does make its way to the forward line. It's just we don't produce an awful lot off the back of it. And I think that's where it looks mundane. That's where it starts to look boring. Now, I do agree with you. I think longer games go on, and the longer we sort of miss some of the chances that we create, then it does. People start taking less risks and stuff like that. I can sort of understand that. But look, like I said, we're not a pretty team to watch, but we are a fucking dogged team. And sometimes that can beat pretty teams. So hopefully we can do Chelsea today with our dogged nature and put 3 points on the board. And then Less Known says, Frank looked at Tell, Simmons and found Bergvall better fit for purpose. Well, I think that probably highlights, what he thinks of Matisse Tell in that regard, definitely, for sure. But look, I think we'll call it there, Stevie. I've really enjoyed this pre-match build-up. No, Jack, I may go and find out where he is. But I really appreciate
telling you what,
today,
man,
absolute legend.
That Northwest IPA has an effect on people, man. Trust me when I tell you that. I would probably assume that Jacko, had an IPA or two last night and came back to bite him. Quickly before I go, I do want to say that yesterday I predicted a 2-2 draw, and I still think that this is now the fourth straight week that I predicted a draw. When I look at Chelsea and the way that they're going to play and the identity of which they play, they're going to nick a goal or two. But that being said, when I look at this lineup, there's no reason why I think that we also can't do the same. And I think this is going to be a hard fought scrap, and we will get a result out of this one today.
Oh, I hope so. I really do hope so, Steve. At the end of the day, we've got much bigger games coming up, and I just think we take something from today's game. All of a sudden, the players start having a lot of belief moving forward. They believe they can compete with these teams this year, and that's absolutely massive in a team environment. So, hopefully we can get something from today's game and move into other fixtures that are to come. I'm just putting your link in here. So, guys, please make sure if you've enjoyed Stevie's contribution today, to get over to his own channel, not just today, by the way, but, every pre-match build-up. Make sure you get over to his channel and check it out and smash that subscribe button and show him some love. Big up, Lee Moody. Good to see you, says Simply Coys. And then we've also got Spilver Spurfer. Can we just change that to Silver Surfer, please? Because you're getting me every single time I bring up your name, my man. He says, Coys. But look, guys, we're going to call it there. I'm going to let all you guys go off. Get your dinner, get your family settled, get your drinks out of the fridge. I don't care whether it's fizzy pop or alcohol. Just make sure you join us back here for the watch along in half an hour's time for the big one, where Tottenham go after BTEC Pep. the CEO of the Chelsea Flower Show. So let's take the head off the flowers. Let's fucking go. Come on, you Spurs. And today, in Frank we trust.
Come on, you Spurs. Kulusevski forever.